All right, House of Hoops podcast episode 3. Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's House of Hoops podcast. We're sitting here getting ready to film episode 3. It's right before the Thanksgiving holiday, so should be a nice short week this week, hopefully. We'll see. But wanted to get back out there. We talked last time a lot about entrepreneurship. You had a fun little trip down to visit Mitch with me, picking up the new watch. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that and had a good time. This time we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're out here, out in my RV, out by the Chesapeake Bay. It's a really nice fall day, so hopefully get some outdoor shots. You guys can see the area, just some nice nature shots. But wanted to get back to talking about the economy. We talked mostly, like I said, about entrepreneurship. Didn't really get time to touch on some of the questions you guys had, stemming all the way back from episode 1. So wanted to tackle some of those. We'll hit out some more business stuff, maybe talk a little bit about people management, treating people, how you manage overall. But wanted to hit on some of the economy stuff with everything going on now, conversations about the tariffs, the budget, government budget, how that's affecting everything. December's coming up quick. Are we going to be dropping interest rates again? Will it be 25 basis points, 50 basis points? We'll find that out. Talk about tariffs. How tariffs are affecting everything, and just the economy in general. So I wanted to start with tariffs, because that seems to be a lot of DMs that I got, some comments on some of the videos. So tariffs, what are they? What do they do? So really what we're trying to do with tariffs and what the government's trying to do is to incentivize Americans to buy American, and basically penalize external foreign companies from coming in and bringing in products from outside that's taking away from American-made products. So, for example, cars, or, we talked about watches last time. Even soybeans and things that we get, very heavily from China, and other things. Like, how are we addressing some of that, as well as exports? We get heavily tariffed from other countries, and it's been very, very unbalanced. You hear everybody talking about the trade deficit, meaning that we get tariffed very, very heavily for what we're exporting to other countries, and we really weren't tariffing on the incoming goods as much as we really should have, to kind of balance out that give and take. Now, going back, tariffs were really the main source of the government's income. Like, how did government fund themselves in the beginning, way back when we first started the country through the 1800s, all the way through the early 1900s, were really tariffs and property sales, land sales, government owning land, starting to sell some of that land, generating the revenues. And tariffs were really the biggest part of how the government paid for itself. Government was much, much smaller than it is today, so it was a little bit easier to do that. But slowly over time, that's kind of really shifted. Really not until the 1920s, during the wars, did we start ramping up income taxes on folks. And those income taxes were helping to fund the war, funding the military, all the equipment and everything we had to do for the troops, for everything that we had to build, was really helping there. And then the goal was to kind of get rid of those, flush them back out, get back to the tariffs funding the government. Over time, that slowly ramped up to the income tax coming in there. Government grew. Tariffs were never going to cover it. Tariffs were really never gone. They were just really becoming smaller piece of the revenue. And it just got to the point where income tax was the way to go. And the income tax, snowballed into be bigger and bigger and bigger. And we kept increasing it as government grew. And that's kind of where we ended up now. I think, there's not many people out there to say if we could tariff, everything, and we could get away from paying any federal income tax, I think all of us would do cartwheels. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that would argue that would be a great thing to do. However, by doing that, does that mean all the goods and everything that we're purchasing just amplify and become uber more expensive? And then you have to balance is not paying income tax, but paying higher goods. Can you make that work? And I'm not saying one way or the other, can you make it work? There's a lot of infrastructure that you'd want to get into place. A lot of manufacturing jobs are starting to come back to the U.S., but again, a lot of them are going to be 2-3 years from now because they have to build the facilities, build the plants to be able to hire more people, which is in process, but it's not going to happen overnight. So are the tariffs killing pricing and what's going on today? In some categories it is. There's certainly people who have certain niche items that they're buying that they have a preferred product they want to purchase and maybe don't want to shift to a different product that may be made in America without the tariffs. That's maybe slightly less costly, but not the quality that they want. And that's a give and take. Is it the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? I don't really think that's my my position to say that because I'm affected differently than other people, the types of things I'm doing. I can say I have felt it. One of the reasons we had Mitch in the last episode is normally I wait until the holidays to go visit him, but I visited him in early October simply because I know all of the Switzerland imported goods were going to start getting a tariff from those companies starting at the end of October, beginning of November. So for me, I adapted and figured that out. And then I've accounted for that in the future of how things are going to affect me going down the road. But not everybody has that ability, especially middle income to lower income families. We'll start to feel some of that for some of the everyday goods that are much, much cheaper because of the labor costs and everything else from outside the country that they're importing in and now have to pay a tariff. So how that's going to affect. For right now, the CPIs are relatively stable. We're seeing unemployment rate tick up a little bit from initial numbers. Again, the government just opened back up a week or so ago, so we don't have all the data. We saw very, very good jobs data coming out from October and September from some of the numbers that have been posted. So there's a lot of hopeful for the economy. The stock market has done reasonably well. We've given some back over the last couple of weeks, but still much better than it was beginning of the year. Crypto is a big one that everybody's talking about. Bitcoin has kind of dropped precipitously. I want to say I looked, it was in the mid 80s this morning. I think it got up to 115 to 120 range. So that's a pretty big drop. There's a lot of conversation there, a lot of institutional investors taking out profits, unclear where things are going, wanted to get those profits in their pockets. But when you look back, there's been cycles for the crypto space where it has dropped a large amount, stabilized, and grown back up. And it's happened from the beginning where it comes up, drops down, comes up, drops down, comes up, drops down. And that's what we're hoping for is, hopefully it drops down, good time to buy if you're in that investment space. If you took some of the profits away up top, sold for 115, now you can buy back even more, Bitcoin at 85. Is it the right time? Has it bottomed out? That's always a risk. It's gambling. Anybody tells you differently, it's not. You can try to do anything you want to predict where it's going to go, but on Bitcoin, it's really tough. There's no tangible product you can go put your hands on and know the manufacturing demand for it is specifically going in a certain direction. So that's there. So the economy in general is just something that when we think about it, how does it affect us as entrepreneurs, large businesses, small businesses, where are they headed? How are we going? So really, I look at it every day. I try to log on. I go to, Yahoo Finance. I go to the Wall Street Journal. I have Schwab, so I go into Schwab, Robinhood, and look at everywhere. What are the prevailing winds? Where are they headed? How are things going? I try to keep up with anything coming out of the House or the Senate. What are anything that's going to affect the economy or things of that nature? The most recent bill, the CR, I should say, that extended and reopened the government through the end of January. A lot of stuff in there with healthcare. How's healthcare going to affect all of us? Because it affects everyone, especially small business owners that have a staff of people that you're paying for benefits. When healthcare's costs go up, it's a direct impact to the business because that's additional money that you may not have budgeted in. So I would say if you are a small business owner, medium business owner, or even a large business owner, a big corporation, you should be accounting for potentially 10 to 20% increases in healthcare costs next year. Will it happen? I can't say that. I'm not an expert on the healthcare space, but the prevailing winds and the talk out there is, there is a risk that if, some of the things aren't extended, that, healthcare costs will go up in the short term. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff on the table of things that can go in to go, hopefully address that. Will it work? We'll see. But again, nothing is a flip the switch, especially with the economy. You can't just go in and flip a switch and all of a sudden things align. There's a slow buildup. And a slow improvement when you look at gas prices right now. I forget the last time I was able to fill up my my GMC 2500 for less than $100, and I have been the last few fill-ups. Our regular gas cars with gas prices getting under $3 a gallon now, that's fantastic. Egg prices are down, milk prices are down. A lot of stuff out there is cheaper. But overall, the whole economy is a little bit more expensive, even though things are coming down, that people still aren't where they're happy to say the economy has rebounded. And that's a problem the government's going to have to figure out and focus on. I think there's been a lot of focus on the government on foreign relations, the tariff front, balancing the trade deficit, trying to figure out how to get peace throughout the regions of the world. And with the mindset of, gas prices dropping, egg prices dropping. I think there was the thought from the White House and some of the government agencies that, we're doing a good job, but the American people just aren't feeling that. And that's something they have to embrace. And, it doesn't matter what you tell them. If they're feeling something different, you have to address, how they're experiencing it, because every American experiences things differently. I think I've gone before and said many, many times, and a lot of outlets are starting to get on board and talk about what I've talked about in the past, which is there are two separate economies now, at least in the U.S. Since the 2020, 2021 stimulus time, where it split the economy into two, where a lot of the mid to upper end took that money, paid down debt, improved their savings accounts, and basically just spent at their normal rates. They didn't increase spending. And then you had the lower end who decided, hey, I have all this stimulus, let me start using it, and I don't need to work. A lot of people left the workforce. They figured out they could get the stimulus and still work for under the table. Now they're in a position where they're working under the table. They're happy with it. They're not having to pay the taxes. They're still collecting a little unemployment, and overall it's a better deal for them. On top of that, when you take a look at the different generations, you have the baby boomers, you have Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. Millennials will, at this pace, be the first generation to kind of go backwards and not improve upon the previous generation's stability. And that's a real thing, because a lot of the millennials just don't really value material things like Gen X did and baby boomers. And I'm really talking probably more of the younger millennials and the Gen Z, where they're not necessarily worried about a house. They feel a house is too expensive for them. They're fine renting. A lot of them don't need a car. They live in places where they can take public transportation or walk or bike. They don't really need it. And it's just a different environment. You don't have those people trying to go out there, pound the pavement for 60, 70 hours a week to build up a reserve to go buy the material things they want. They're happy to do what they need to do to be happy in their daily lives. Do they have a roof over their head? Can they get to where they want to get? Can they eat how they want to eat? Can they have some of the materials like the phone, the iPads, things like that? That's their thing. Can I do that? Well, I don't really need to push it even further. And that's something that we're going to have to deal with as an economy, when the upper end of the environment is really going to be more and more Gen X and baby boomers as they retire and eventually, pass on. What is it replenished with, and how does the U.S. economy stabilize? And that's something I don't think anybody, especially government, has figured out the right way to make it work. And I think that's something they have to do sooner than later, is figure out that it's not a one-size-fits-all anymore, right? The Fed makes rate decisions based on one-size-fits-all. It's not working, right? They've dropped 50 basis points in however long, and mortgage rates fluttered a little bit, came down a little bit, but kind of really has stayed stagnant. The stock market has been up and down, really haven't gotten that growth you'd hope based on some of the profits that are coming out of a lot of the different companies. AI has kind of triggered a lot of things, with a lot of AI investments going upside down here and there, and over, taking capital from companies. How's that going to react? You see the EV push that happened over the last 4 years is starting to bite back. I believe I heard Chevy is really pulling back on their big EV push of where they were headed. I know for sure Ford has discontinued the Lightning for right now, not being able to really make that work. So there's a lot of things going in there of, a lot of push of what's happened the last 4 years aren't coming to fruition. And how do we pivot? Where does AI take us? The EV market take us? Where did technology take us? The stimulus that came out before, is that still lingering in and hurting us? When will that flush out? Tariffs, are they going to eventually bubble up prices more so like the fear is? Haven't really seen it as much, but there's the worry out there. So even though the economy seems to be going in a decent direction, the stock market's up from the beginning of the year. It was up huge, and now it's settled a little bit. Bitcoin's fluttering, so that's the inverse. It's coming down. Ethereum and all the other ones as well. And then you have, in general, prices coming down in different places. But when you talk to people, you just don't feel that narrative from actual everyday Americans. And I think that's something we really need to figure out. So that's kind of my spiel on the economy, where it's headed. It's more of a high level. I don't think I generated and got into too much detail other than talking about the history of tariffs, which I thought was interesting when I started looking into it. I kind of knew the high level, but the fact that, income tax wasn't really generated until post-war, that we really relied on tariffs and land sales, that's how we funded the government, really makes you think about how big government's gotten, where we can't maintain how we built the country to run. we had to do an income tax and tax the people. And I don't think, taxing more and more is ever going to be the right reason, because then you really de-incentivize people to say, if I make more, I got to pay you more. Does that make any sense? You're kind of anti, capitalism at that point. And I do worry that that's a trajectory you see a lot of people going in, is that anti-capitalism or pro-socialist environment. And, entrepreneurs are capitalists in nature. You're trying to do something for yourself. You're trying to, make your life better. And, that's a big benefit of being in the United States of America. So that's not something I think, me personally, I wouldn't lose. I don't really get political, but that is something that being a prideful American is, I can set my own destiny. It gave me the opportunity to leave my corporate job, start my own business, and become successful at it if I wanted to. I don't really see being able to do that in a different type of environment that's not capitalistic, right? That's something I feel that I think is very good for all of us in the long run, for the U.S. to separate itself from the rest of the world. So I'll get off my soapbox, not get too down the political landscape, but, reach out, let us know other specific topics you want us to deep dive on the economy. We'll have another segment coming up, talk a little bit about people management, especially in the entrepreneurship world. And then overall, a lot of good feedback. Thank everybody for your comments, your likes, all of the feedback that we get on a constant basis, directly or through the social media outlets. But if you're watching on YouTube, go check out, other places. We have some shorts on there that we don't have in YouTube, whether that be on TikTok, X, Instagram. Also, the podcast is out there, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go take a look. But most importantly, get out there, subscribe. We see a ton of viewers and a very low subscribe rate. It really helps us kind of figure out what is going well. When you subscribe and you take a look at what's out there, not only does it notify you when stuff comes out, but also helps us to know, hey, they subscribed when they were watching this video. That was good content. Let's continue with that. So it's good feedback for us. So make sure you go ahead, pound that and smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, and ultimately comment, give us some feedback, tell us where you want to go the next facet. So on that one, on to the next topic. All right, we're back. Just kind of stepped outside, decided to get out in nature. It's a beautiful day, mid-50s, so maybe a little chilly, but not too bad. Yeah, I got plenty of insulation here, so it'll be a nice one to kind of speak outside. With something that I think is kind of evolved to be near and dear to my heart, which is managing people and making sure I'm taking care of the people that work for me and work with me. Kind of take you back to the early beginnings of people management, because I think it's very prevalent when you're going to start your own business. You're going to have people working for you, especially if you're younger and you really don't have a lot of management experience, people experience in different venues. I think it's a big deal. But I started my managing career, managing of people, back when I was very young. I had just graduated college. I think I was about 22 years old. Started managing in the risk management division within MBNA America for the credit side on the credit card division. And had a bunch of people work for me, and a lot of them were older than I was. Actually, everybody but one person was older than me. So I did that really quickly to be able to establish myself, and I always had that. I needed to justify my existence of where I was to be where I'm sitting. So I was very, very focused on doing the right thing, achieving high expectations of my management team, making sure that they were getting everything they needed out of me. So I really kind of treated people as resources. I knew what my goals were, know where my finish line was on each project. So I actually would go through and treat people of, I need this done by you by tomorrow, or I need this next week. And it really was eclipsing me to say, what is this person here for? Why are they here? Why are they working this job? What's their end goal? What's their personal situation? What affects them other than work? How do I adapt to them? How do I relate to them? And how do I make their lives as good as they want to be based on their goals? It never really crossed my mind, really wasn't something I focused on. It was always run 100 miles an hour, make sure we got everything done, make sure everything was accurate and a good deliverable. And that was what I really measured as success. And when I was writing reviews, my reviews were very focused on what was being delivered, how well they delivered against deadlines, accuracy, product, and all of that. And it really wasn't about the person from that perspective. I have a much different perspective now. When I went to Wells Fargo, I left MBNA, went to Wells Fargo when they started a new division, which was Wells Fargo Financial Acceptance, which was their indirect auto lending business. They bought a small indirect auto lender out of Philadelphia, and I got the privilege of going over there to help run their risk management division with a few other people. From there, we expanded and grew quite healthily to the point where we had to open up whole new call centers across the U.S. We started out with just two, one in Kansas City, one in, I think Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And then we opened up new ones in Arizona and down in Florida. So I got the advantage, and I think I was only about 26, 27, to actually move down to Florida, find a site, build it out, hire 550 people, get them all trained and up and running, get them to get out doing collections of past due auto loans, which meant, repossession sometimes, and also remarketing and selling the cars. On top of that, it was the first time I had really done more than maybe 2 layers, where I had somebody reporting to people who work for me, who work for them, who work for them, who work for them, like 5 layers of people. And very quickly, you start to see there's people there in a call center that are there for a paycheck. They're there to basically fund their life, make sure that their kids are getting what they need, make sure they're putting food on the table. Unlike my first introduction to management, which was in a professional, more of a salaried environment of risk management professionals, so people who graduated with mathematics degrees, statistical degrees, who are very, very career focused, who were very focused on the end of the rainbow type things. Whereas a lot of the people that work for me in Florida, when I went down and opened that call center, 550 of them were collectors. The other 50 were management team. Those 550 collectors and customer service agents, a lot of them were there for a paycheck. A lot of them were there to make sure they could live their lives. And it really didn't work the same of getting them, enthused to actually show up to work or become, the best they can be at the job. And what I learned very quickly, working with my HR person, who luckily came from Disney, who had a lot of good insights there, allowed me to really figure out how I should manage people and take interest of them. I did a lot of work walking around that floor every day for a few hours, trying to learn every single person's name. Did I learn 550 people's names? No. But I learned a very, very large degree of them, to the point where I at least knew first names. I at least knew enough to know what they were working on, and really start to learn that, hey, there's a lot of people here who aren't here for the same reason I am, don't have the same goals that I do. And trying to manage people and treat people the exact same, no matter who they are, doesn't work. You have to treat each person for what they are. And that kind of started the evolution of how I manage people and how I think about it, to the point where I had a lot of good fortune that I learned how to manage people. I think it acclimated well, where I started to have people follow me, leaving one company to another. When I left MBA to go to Wells Fargo, I had 10 or 11 people follow me there. Went to Citibank, had a bunch of people follow there. Went to Barclays, a bunch of people followed me there. And to this day, a lot of the people that work at Predictive Analytics Group with me are all people I've worked with in the past. And really how I accomplished that was figuring out what do they want out of this? Not just what do I need out of them, but what do they want out of their career? Are they looking to do this for the rest of their lives? Are they looking to take my job? Are they looking to do something completely different? And this is just a stepping stone. And embracing that and helping them achieve their goals and treating each person individually. When you hire somebody to help you chase your dreams, when you're starting up a new company, the worst thing I think you can do is treat people as just a resource. You're going to hire them. You need them to do a specific job. You just give them tasks, and then that's it. If they deliver, you're happy with them. If they don't, you're angry with them. But that's all you engage with them, instead of finding out, are they here? Do they have a family? What is their long-term goals? Are they looking to do something different? Are they looking to learn? Is this just a stepping stone? Is it just something until they find something better? And then over time, you start to realize you start taking interest in your people. You start treating them as individuals and not resources. You start to get a much better relationship with them, and you find out very quickly what direction you need to go with them. If there's plenty of people I've worked with and have worked for me in the past that I knew, from frank conversations, they weren't looking to be in my division for very long. This was an educational stop for them for something greater. Okay, well, how can I help them help me and help themselves? I get more out of them by trying to help them find their end goal, right? So maybe they're looking to move in the finance division, but they want a risk management education to figure out how the analytical side of it worked. So in order to do that, set up some time for them to go sit side by side with someone in finance. Have conversations with some of the leadership in the finance team to know that they have contacts there as roles come up. Start talking and say, I have somebody here who does very, very good work for me, but they're looking to be finance long term. When you have something pop up, let me know. The great thing there is you find great people for other people. They start looking for you as well. And it starts to really, steamroll into everybody's helping each other, and you're treating people as important individuals and not just as resources, which is ultimately, as a small business, you can't afford, if you have 3 or 4 people, for 2 of them to leave. You're all of a sudden stuck. You need to find people, educate them, train them, get them up to speed to be able to take over. Whereas if you know what that person is thinking, it's not a surprise and you can plan. If you know they're looking for something else, but they do great work, great. Have a backup plan and make sure you're planning accordingly. And on top of that, if that person knows that you have their best interest in mind and you're not going to stand as a roadblock for them, they'll be more open with you and give you a heads up and be more willing to say, hey, I'll take care of you until you find somebody to replace me, instead of just saying, hey, I got a new job, I'm out of here next week, see you later, which could leave you as a small business with very, very minimal resources as, very, very tough. So it's a tough thing to make sure that you know what those people need, what your individuals are. Treat them like family is the best I can say, which we try to do every day. Whether we are hiring people that have 25, 30 years of experience to somebody who's in college, right? Treat everybody how you want to be treated. I think that is a core crux of being a people manager. Take interest in what they are and what they're doing. Don't try to just think of them as a resource and just set it and forget it. Make sure that you're communicating. I think we did a lot of work when I first started the company of figuring out how we're going to staff this. A lot of it in the beginning was hiring people that I've worked with for years and years. The other thing is you just can't go hire a bunch of $200,000 a year employees. You need people to actually do some of the lower end heavy lifting, but you don't have the money to go out and pay, $150,000, $120,000. So how do you make that work? So being that I'm a University of Delaware guy, I started my career at University of Delaware and learned, I had to pay for college. So I worked full time at the bank, as I mentioned before. So I said, let's try that again. So we started hiring sophomores in college to come work for us. They would work for us part-time during the school year, full-time over the summer. And the hope is they do it all through their sophomore, junior, senior year. So when they graduate, they have 3 years experience with us. They know how we operate. They felt like they're part of the PAG family. And then we can offer them a full-time position as the ultimate goal if we have the spots open. And it's worked great for us over the years. In fact, in 2020, we had the great fortune of not being hurt as much as a lot of our competitors. A lot of our competitors closed up their brick and mortar shops. They laid off a lot of people. Their revenues plummeted, more than a 50% reduction in revenue. We felt it. We had about a 25% reduction in revenue, but a lot of our stuff was stable. So we were still able to hire a lot of our college graduates when they graduated in that summer of 2020, which was fantastic. We got to hire a couple of people who were getting let go from other places to help build our bench, which was great. And we kept getting good new projects, although not as quickly as we wanted to, but it allowed us to be stable. And I think we had a lot of good interactions with people that worked for us to make sure that our management team that I put through to say, hey, look, you need to treat them as you would treat yourself, or you treat a family member. You want them to show up to be happy to work here, not just to say, I need to get in to check a box so I get my next paycheck. So that 2020 year was something that I think was great from my perspective of how we succeeded throughout the pandemic. Was we didn't take a big hit. We still operated. We didn't lay anybody off. In fact, we hired. We achieved a lot of our goals, and it was a great environment. As a side note, 2020 was also a great time for us, for both my wife and myself, hitting some of our financial goals that we had in the short term. So as I've said before, a lot of things that in my life are kind of targeted of different events and different things that I've achieved at different times. I want to memorialize them. So, kind of that's what I did. So take a little sidebar. So my sidebar that I'm going to talk about is another watch where I know you guys love to see the watches, get a lot of good feedback on them, a lot of cool stuff. So we're going to jump forward. I'm not going to go in order of everything I bought. But this watch is the first Rolex that I ever purchased. Funny story, when I had the Breitling that I showed, I think, in episode 1, when I went into the dealer to buy, I was looking to buy a Rolex, a lower end Rolex, not too expensive, but one of those to get entry, and quickly found out that that's not how Rolexes work. You don't just go walk in and buy a Rolex unless you're going to buy an unpopular one that, they're there. But stainless steel, sports watches and everything, the most popular, they're limited, production runs. Rolex only has so many, so you really got to build up into it. So, obviously I started with Breitling, moved to Omega. Finally, in 2020, as I hit those goals that I was speaking about from a financial perspective, it was a perfect time. So June 2020, the company, we just hired 3 of our college graduates who just graduated, who were actually our first batch of college graduates that were in our program. So that was a great thing. Things were moving along very well. Pandemic still happened, but we were moving along at a great pace. So I decided, got a call from my watch dealer saying, hey, the Rolex that you wanted is finally in. Are you interested? And it was one of those perfect timings that, yes, I wanted it. Yes, we just hit some milestones from a personal perspective that I wanted to memorialize. So that's what I did. So I went over. It wasn't Mitch. This was very, very pre-Mitch. So sorry, Mitch, if you're seeing this. But this is my first Rolex. It is the Deep Sea Dweller. So they call it the James Cameron. If anybody knows the James Cameron movie where he actually physically went down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, he actually had Rolex strapped a watch to the outside of that sub that actually went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So this is that watch that kind of memorializes that. It's a dive watch. Again, it's called the Deep Sea. It's nicknamed the James Cameron. You can see kind of the shading of the blue. I think Devin will get some close-ups of it later, but you can see how it kind of goes from that light blue down to the very, very dark spot, which is to show the depth of the dive that occurred, when he was doing that. So it does go down to 12,800, down at the bottom depths, feet, or 3,900 meters, which is at depth. So if I ever think that I'm going to go down at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, hopefully I have this watch on. But again, it's special. It was the first Rolex I ever owned. It was something that's very, very, quite frankly, the perfect timing for me to kind of memorialize it. And it's a great watch. It's nice and thick. It's very heavy. It's 44 millimeter. I really enjoy the full stainless steel band. I wear it all over the place. I go, swimming with it. I can wear it as a dress watch, as an everyday watch. But it's one of my favorite ones as well. Based on the history of it. So a lot of the firsts I've had are some of my favorites. My first Breitling, my first Omega, my first Rolex. So I'll go through some of the first because those are my favorites, and then we'll get into some of the other ones and fun stuff. I think also we're talking about maybe doing some watch giveaways here once we start hitting some milestones in some of our subscribers. So make sure you get out there. The more subscribers we get, once we get to a certain point, I have some things in the work to start doing some watch giveaways, but we kind of have to hit that certain mark. So make sure when you go in, like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, subscribe. Like, we have a lot of people watching the videos, which is great, just not as many subscriptions. So make sure you click on that so you can see some new comments, coming down the road. So, that's kind of the sidebar I wanted to get into, as you guys always love to see the watch. So, cool. So getting back to it, when you're looking to build your organization, understand what your staffing needs are. Understand that when you hire people, know what your plan is there. Are you looking to hire people to have them matriculate up the rungs with you as you grow? They would grow with you. Or are you looking just to get manpower, just to check the box? That'll also tell you, is it the right time to start hiring people as W-2 employees or just use 1099s? Because it's just a targeted onesie, twosie things that you need here and there. So make sure you're treating people correctly and letting them know, this is my goals. This is what I see for this position. What are you looking to get out of it? Have the conversation. Don't let what they want be a surprise to you, and don't let what you need from them be a surprise to them. Have open communications. Treat them as you want to be treated, and make them part of the family. Like, if you're part of an organization you're building, you want that to be your family, right? They're helping you succeed in your goals as much as you're trying to help them succeed in theirs. Your company does not work by yourself if you're going to grow it and be its scale, right? You can't do everything your whole entire career, the whole length of the business. Eventually, you're going to have to do a net worth, or else at the end of the rainbow, when you're ready to walk away, that business isn't ready to figure out what the next step is. Is it handing it off to a group of people that are ready to take it over? Is it selling it? Is it getting equity investors and hiring up to scale it? You have to have a plan, and you have to have the right people to help you succeed. You can't do it all on your own. Surround yourself with smart people and listen to them. Understand what they need. Understand what you want them to do. Make sure they understand what you need from them, and ultimately be partners in the fact that everything you're doing together is to achieve the goals that you both want. But I think that's the most important thing that I've heard a lot of people speaking about. Just at a couple conferences, and people were talking about retention of people being a real issue nowadays, especially in larger companies, that people aren't sticking around. And I will say, I still hold that this is 80%, 90% true, that ultimately people leave managers, not companies a lot of times, that most of the time people are leaving because they're not happy in their current situation. They may have been happy if they had a better manager who took into account their needs and their wants and understand them. But a lot of times they're leaving because of that simple fact. They're finding something better and they're figuring out what the right fit is. And I think that's important to retain strong individuals is, one, understand what they want, understand what you want, and treat each other respectfully. So that was something I thought that was a good one to touch on because it was something that popped up recently. I've had a couple, not clients, but I would say other entrepreneurs that we speak a lot about, that they're building small businesses, that they've been struggling with the people side of it. And this is a conversation I had with them that they really didn't think about it in that manner. They were just like, hey, I need people to fill a spot. I need people to do the work. And my question was, okay, but what do they want? All right. What happens the first time a hurdle comes up or they get a better offer? Why would they even consider staying with you if you don't even care what they want? So think about that as you're staffing up your positions, if you're being an entrepreneur, or even if you're in the corporate world, right? This helped me tremendously in the corporate world, was making sure your people are loyal to you and making sure you're loyal to them, right? It can't go one way. It has to go both ways. And you have to help them achieve their goals, even if it means them leaving and going to a different division or different department, because it might not be the long fit long term. They may be your best performer, but if you're holding them back from doing what they want, all of a sudden it's not a good relationship and you're not going to get out of them what you need. So do the right thing. Other people see that you're doing the right thing by your people. Other people will want to come work for you, that want to be in that role with you, that are strong performers, and that's how you succeed, right? Treat people with respect. Treat people with the utmost understanding of what they want, and make sure that you're treating them as a person, not as a resource. So that's my 2 cents and my long diatribe. So hopefully it was enjoyable. Got to take a look at another watch, but on to the next one. I think we'll have some fun stuff coming up. But we're on to the next topic. Thanks, guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you enjoy the first couple segments over at the RV. Sitting in the car, leaving the office, gonna have to drive through campus. At some point go hook up with my son, who's here at University of Delaware, and then gonna head home. But wanted to set some stuff on my mind since our last conversation at the RV and the last couple episodes, just in general about entrepreneurship. Things that keep you up at night, which is always a great starter when you're a consultant, you're working with your clients. You're always asking them, hey, what's keeping you up at night? What's the big thing that just makes you lay in bed and not fall right asleep? And for me, it's more of in the car when I'm driving around and I got a lot of time to myself. Sometimes I won't even have the radio on, and I'll just think through things, new ideas, things that I want to do, things I want to expand on the business or change about the business. Or anything, new projects coming up. But it's also where I kind of try to work out a lot of my headaches, things that are going on with the business, new clients that are coming up, large projects, expansions, risks that I'm taking on a regular basis if we're deciding to hire and expand or to, go into a new vertical or new line of business. So it's really good to be able to kind of gather my thoughts and give myself some time. So the drive from the office to the house is probably only about 15-20 minutes, but it's a great 15-20 minutes to just turn the radio off, decompress, no email up, nothing going on, just me and my thoughts and thinking about things. But sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I think everybody should have some time. A lot of people like to meditate. A lot of people like to read, to decompress. I like to just sit with my thoughts and just think through things and kind of get it out of my head, so that hopefully that way I'm not laying in bed later and, going through it again. Now, does that always work? No. Sometimes what I think about in the car makes it worse. And then I'm up until 3, 4 a.m. thinking about stuff that I thought about in the car, but it usually works out to be very, very good stuff. So from that perspective, take time out of your day, every day if you can, if not at least, 4 or 5 days a week, to just think through things that are bothering you. What are the different approaches you can do? The people that are working for you as you grow your business, making sure that they're understanding what you need from them. A lot of people, when you're coming in, if you're like me, I'm hiring a lot of people who've been in the corporate world for 20, 25 years. So working in a entrepreneurial type environment with clients who are expecting you to be there at different times of the day, different time zones and things like that, you can't just, sit at your desk 9 to 5, and do your normal approach like you would in a corporation. You have to be there for your client. If they're West Coast, that may mean you need to take some calls at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. But that also means that you don't have to rush around in the morning if you're focusing in on them, because they're still sleeping at 5 a.m. when it's 8 a.m. here. But, how do I deal with my people? How do I deal with different things that are popping up? Having that time to decompress and think through things, I think, is very, very important for anyone. So do that. Take some time out of your day to yourself. If you're someone who likes to meditate, someone who likes to just, take a long hot shower, take a bath, just do something where you're just focusing on you, focusing on your thoughts, getting it out of your head and getting comfortable with where you need to go, because ultimately it'll help you tremendously. And a lot of times great ideas come from that. When you're not distracted, you're not thinking about multiple things, you're not on your device, you're not in the phone, you're not in the computer. You can get a lot of stuff done, and you can get a lot of stuff through your head that you want to get through. So I just recommend that for anyone. Driving through campus here, University of Delaware, and definitely bringing back memories. Living on campus for, the 5.5 years it took me to graduate. Again, not because of educational issues, just because of working full time, changing my major in my sophomore year from engineering to business. But spent a lot of time here on campus, near campus, and it's always fun to drive through. And my son going here is great because I get to come see him, and our office is right on campus too. So another good thing there. But driving home the other day with my son, we were having a conversation that kind of ties into some of the stuff we talked about at the RV, which was, affordability, the economy, where things are headed. And I hear a lot of kids out there, especially graduating college, looking for jobs, or in college worrying about what they're going to do when they graduate. And I have a lot of conversations with my kids about, how are you preparing, when you're going to graduate? How do you prepare in high school before you go to college? Because that's really where the rest of your life begins. You selecting what you're going to do when you go to college is ultimately where it's going to put you in the long term. Now, can people shift? Of course. My wife's uber successful in the analytics space, and one of the forefront of fraud in the entire country, and she went to school for political science, right? But she had a good affinity to the analytics side, polling, things like that. She worked on the Hill, got to see behind the scenes for 3 years at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. But there's always examples that you don't have to do what you went to school for, but it should be something that gives you skill sets that takes you into the future. So there's a lot of different issues I see with the younger generation now. Yes, things are more expensive. The ratio of housing to salary, the interest rates are one thing too, because they're a little bit different, which can affect payments. But ultimately, you have to have a plan, right? If you're going to go to college, you're going to go and study a certain discipline. What are your options once you graduate to use that degree? Are there jobs out there that are going to pay you what you want to get paid, 6 figures and above, or are you going to be stuck on doing low paid events and have to get a second job to live off of? Likewise, while you're in college, it's definitely time to explore yourself, understand the future, but it's also time to prepare. Right? There's so many kids out there, so many companies whether it's financial services, insurance, business, retail, that have call centers, and they center them around college campuses on purpose to get kids to come in. And a lot of them are great part-time resources, right? Come in for 4 hours a night from 5 to 9 to take customer service calls or things of that nature. And you can make very, very, very good money. A lot of those places are paying $30, $40 an hour. A lot of times, sometimes it's only 20, depending on where you live. Obviously, it's different depending on cost of living and state by state. But, if all you're going to do is go take your degree, go to college, graduate, and then expect someone to give you a six-figure job with no experience and just a college degree, it's never going to happen. And it never did happen in the past either, right? Most people in my generation worked in high school, in middle school, in college, and have their resume set up to show that they were doing work. So don't just sit there and expect to get a job out of the gate. If you have time that you can graduate, wait 5-6 years to get a full-time job that you like, okay, maybe you don't have to rush and prepare. But if you're looking to graduate and hit the working world and get going, you're not just going to live off of your degree alone. Most people are very picky, a lot of automation out there, so they want people they know are dedicated, can do the work, and are willing to show up. And if you can get into jobs in college that pays you a decent wage, you can put money in your pocket, and you have experience, twofold there. It's a resume builder when you're looking for your gold job of what you want when you graduate, but it also opens up opportunities. I didn't want to be in banking when I was in college. I wanted to do something fun with the analytics side and with the business side, but I got into having my college paid for by the bank and finding out that there's all different places inside the bank that do different things, such as the analytics departments, the operational departments, things that are behind the scenes that weren't me being on the phones and being a day-to-day operator. And it just, opened my eyes, and that's where I ended up building my career. But it was because I was working hard, trying to get experience, trying to make money and pay for myself through college. And you can do that today. You can graduate college, and if there's two of you looking to get married, even if you're struggling to find a specific job, if you had a job through college that would allow you to go to full-time or even try to go full-time your last semester or two when you have a light workload, people out there are making 40 to 80 grand a year just on operational jobs, sitting in a seat taking phone calls. Anybody can do it, right? When you're going in there, they're not looking you to have a college degree when you start, right? When you start out, they're expecting you to have minimal experience, and they're going to teach you what you need to know. And it's good life skills too to understand, different environments and working in those type of jobs. But don't just sit there and don't think about things until it's too late. Prepare up front. Make sure you're choosing your degrees correctly. I think a lot of reasons that average salaries are down for the younger generation is because they're not getting the jobs they could be because they're not starting early enough. So a lot of them are coming out of college. You see a lot of people with good degrees, but they're waiting tables, right? So their incomes are going to be lower, right? When you take a look at college matriculation of people who graduate college based on their degree, and the average starting salaries of those people going into the degrees are very good, but the average person who's getting those good jobs starting at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year were people who had work experience in addition to the degree, not just a degree. So think about that as you're going through. It's not necessarily an entrepreneurial thing when you're starting your own business, but it's certainly starting your life and your career. And that career could lead into giving you education to be entrepreneurial later. But you got to start sooner than you think. If you think you're already behind the 8 ball, you're probably even further behind than you think nowadays, right? A lot of the inaffordability issues is just because people are not willing to grind in the seat of their chair for 50 hours a week, going into the office and taking phone calls and doing stuff like that. Anybody could go out there and get that job. If you're thinking through things, you're presenting yourself very well, you're speaking distinctly, you're speaking respectfully, and you're having an interview. Everywhere around college campuses, and not just colleges, but all over the place, are looking for good people that talk to their customers, and that's a great way to get into a business at the bottom floor and work your way up. So I just wanted to get that out there. We've had conversations. How am I going to afford a house? How am I going to afford this? And my kids, one of them's married, one of them's engaged, and we start just putting it on paper. Even if you have a very low end, type starter job in one of those environments, you both graduate and you're both making $65,000 a year. It's $130,000 a year. You're probably taking home $8,000 a month. And then you can afford to, rent a small place, put some money away to eventually buy a house. Lots of options out there. But if you're going to start, working, waiting tables, making 30, 40 grand a year, finding the right job and not looking to start at the bottom, but trying to start in the middle, and you didn't put in the legwork ahead of time, I can't really be sympathetic to that. Especially when I'm talking to, a lot of the college students who work with me, a lot of my kids and their friends who are in college and looking to start their careers and their lives. And the mindset is completely different. I would like to say my generation, everybody was starting to work and plan way, way earlier, especially those going there. And if they weren't going to college, a lot of my friends went to Votex. They went to, situational, plumbing, engineering, things like that they don't need to go to a 4-year college to get. And nowadays it's just not really pushed on the kids as much as it used to be. I don't think the work ethic is there. I think there's plenty of opportunities for everyone to get out there and do stuff, and I think you just need to figure it out, and don't blame others. Just figure out how you can separate yourself from the next person, and don't wait too long, and don't blame other people when you can't get it done. Figure out how you can make your situation better than today than it was yesterday, and just keep that going over and over again. That's my 2-cent rant, and my as my kids would say, my old man Gen X rant. But I think it's valid, and I think they're both the older two are both working. One full time, one prime time. One's in college as a junior, and he's still, or as a sophomore, and he's working 20 hours a week. And my oldest is now in a full-time position, and their husband is also full-time, so they're working their way to save money for college, and I'm not for college, but for a new house. And I think it's just the right thing to do. Make sure, and if this is you're out there and you have kids, make sure you understand you're not just letting them get away with stuff, and make them go out there. Don't just every time they need something, they need to buy something. Make them maybe not go out and get a job, but all of us did stuff, right? Whether it was sitting on our front lawn at a yard sale selling baseball cards, or mowing the lawn, shoveling snow. Any kid can get out there, make some money on the side, and make them buy their own stuff. Birthday money, Christmas money. There's too many parents out there that their kids say their friends have this and that, and they just go get it bought for them. We didn't have that advantage growing up, a lot of us. So we had to figure that out and go get jobs on our own. So, and it prepared us for the future, and we were ready to go. Nowadays, I just don't feel that in a lot of the college graduates we interview. There's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of lack of understanding what a larger job entails on a day-to-day basis. And, overall, I just think it's something we need to change from a culture perspective. And things will get there. Average wages will go up when kids graduating college already have a baseline and can start making 60 to 80 grand a year instead of, the $30,000, $40,000 a year jobs that are driving down the average salaries that, people are using for comparison purposes. But if you isolate college graduates and STEM degrees, what the average cost they're making. Now, not everybody's getting a job out of college with STEM degrees, but engineering, business, things like that, a much, much higher degree of people are getting higher paying jobs coming out of there than a lot of some of the social sciences. Not to say that's not the right way to go, but make sure you understand that you can't complain later that you have $150,000 in college debt, studying a degree that, best case, 1% of the population is going to make a 6-figure salary ever. Make sure you're looking at the big picture and not just, drinking the Kool-Aid and letting other people tell you what's wrong, right? Figure it out yourself and, plan for the future. But that's my 2 cents. Now I'm going to kind of shut up, drive the rest of the way, and try to figure out, some of the stuff I got going through my head. So I'm not laying in bed waiting until 3 o'clock in the morning and kind of decompress here in the car for the rest of the drive. But thanks for listening again, and thanks for letting me rant. Have a good one. Now on to the next topic.